It was a very hot summer in 1998 when my grandmother called me and my cousins into her bedroom. My grandmother was sick and dying. She smiled at my cousins and I and began to tell us about her life. She told us the most interesting story about how she made a deal with the devil. We were only about 9 years old, but we had heard about the devil in church. She pointed to the bedroom window and told us that life is like that open window. She said that her window was closing, but before her window closed, she needed to tell us her story. She told us that her parents had insisted that her and my grandfather leave the South in 1962 when she was 18 years old and move up north in hopes of a better life. When she arrived up north, she found poverty there as well. Black people was doing a little bit better than in the South, but poverty was still prevalent. My grandfather found some work, but it was barely enough to make ends meet. She said that there were social programs available to poor people, but they weren't able to participate in the programs due to discrimination. Social programs to help poor people have been around for a very long time, and in fact, there have been families who have had to use the benefits of social service programs, such as food stamps, to better their living conditions. Eventually, some of those families were able to move away from those social programs and never return to them. There have also been families who have utilized the benefits of social service for the same reasons, but have never moved away from the programs. The question now becomes, why can some people receive social services and move away from them, and others can't seem to move away from them and continue to stay on them for the rest of their lives? The answer may be in how each person views the program. Some see it as a hand up, while others view it as a hand out. Let me first state that I'm not against social programs or the people who use social programs, because the programs were developed to help people. The goal is to help you identify why you or someone you know can seem to find a way out of social programs, which may have created a poverty plague on their family. After the economic collapse of the 1930s, the government had three problems: farm surpluses, weak sales for grocers, and 17% of unemployment. So they created food stamps in hopes of fixing those three problems. When the food stamp program was first created, it was considered a hand up to people who were out of work and didn't have a lot of money for food. The idea being that once people got back to work, there would be no need for the program. So it may be safe to conclude that the food stamp program was designed to keep people from falling into poverty, although I'm sure that some people had already fallen into that category. The program operated very differently than today, in that the recipient had to purchase the stamps, and then the stamps were used to purchase surplus items at grocery stores. It went like this. For every $1 spent on buying orange stamps, the buyer received 50 cents in blue stamps, thereby increasing their buying power by 50 cents. You can buy between $1 and $1.50 per household, member per week, if you were eligible for the program. In 1943, the program ended due to the economy improving. During the 1930s, when the food stamp program was created, most African Americans were not given any assistance because they didn't meet the requirements. African Americans didn't work typical jobs where they were paid on the books. They worked off the books and were usually paid in cash, and this disqualified them from the program due to the fact that the program required a person paying into Social Security, and since they were paid in cash, they didn't pay into the system, so they couldn't get any of the benefits of the programs. Then to discourage them from moving from the South to participate in the program, the government came up with residency restrictions so they wouldn't qualify for the program. One of the residency requirements in New York was called Man in the House rules. This basically allowed the government to visit the home unannounced, and if a man was living there, then they were barred from receiving any further benefits from the program. When the food stamp program was reintroduced in 1964, it was stated that it was to fight the war on poverty. By doing this, more people, including African Americans, can now qualify for food stamps and other government services. About 2 years after moving north, my father was born. By this time, those same social programs were available to everyone, no matter what your race. Since they were struggling financially, my grandparents decided to learn all that they could about the programs. The programs could really help them to get on their feet and build a future. The deal was simple. She could get a welfare check, food stamps, and Section 8, and there was only one requirement. They had to stay poor for the rest of their lives to get it. As with every deal, there are requirements for the deal. Earlier, I told you how African Americans were prevented from receiving benefits under the program guidelines due to being ineligible because they took jobs that didn't pay into Social Security and the man wasn't able to live in the same household as a woman and children. These individuals who only want a handout have decided and accepted the fact that in order to get the money and or services that they want, they have to work and be paid under the table. And if they have children, the women have accepted the fact that the father of their children cannot live in the same household, which creates a broken home. By doing this, they will forever remain poor, and they will teach their children to do the same thing in most cases. Now, there are children who will not go along with that lifestyle and will choose to live a better life. Once this deal is made, the family enters into a poverty cycle, and this is generational. It will be very difficult for most people to break free from this deal, but it can be done. Let's first understand how this poverty plague actually works. First, the children are taught that it's okay to be poor. There are some people who have given up on ever owning a home or leaving a poverty-plagued area. So since they accepted this as their reality, they teach their children that it's okay to live that way. This is done by the parent not having a purpose for the child. In other words, a parent who wants a child to be successful will have a purpose and a plan for the child to fulfill that purpose. This is done by making sure that the child is educated, responsible, respectful, cultured, and has direction. A parent who has no purpose for the child will basically leave the child to figure out everything without any positive guidance. They will offer no assistance to the child, what makes the child build resentment towards the parents, and eventually leave the home and struggle unless they can figure out what their purpose is in life. Second, they are taught to despise the people who are not poor. They will often be heard saying that the people who are successful think that they are better than everyone else with no personal experience with the person to back that claim. They believe that being rich or wealthy is a bad thing, so they don't pursue it. If someone who is rich or wealthy wants to teach people who are in a poverty plague how to get out of it, they are not treated as warmly as the rich or wealthy people who donate money for a basketball court so that the people can continue to live in poverty but have a nice place to play basketball. Third, they are taught to fear success. If someone thinks differently in terms of bettering themselves, they will be told over and over again that they are wasting their time and that whatever they are doing will not work. This is the other person projecting their fears onto the person wanting out of poverty. It is very difficult for them to accept that the same people who live in the same poverty-plagued area have taken the right steps and have moved away and never returned. They have come to believe that if the person leaves a poverty-plagued area, that they are obligated to come back to that area and donate money so that poor people can continue to stay in that poverty-plagued area. This makes absolutely no sense. And fourth, being poor is made cool and trendy. This is the most common way that poverty is accepted and passed on to future generations. It is very common to see these individuals who live in poverty to be the first person to purchase name brand clothing despite living in poverty. They may do this to make themselves feel like they are rich, and they will teach their children by example that it is better having the trendy clothing and still live in poverty instead of putting the money towards a way out of poverty. Not only is this taught in the home, but it is reinforced through the music and other media that the children are exposed to. This has been taught over and over again. Like I said earlier, not every child will follow this logic, but there are those who do, and it hampers their ability to build wealth. As time went on, my grandmother struggled to get the family off of the social programs, but she said that she had fallen into a cycle of poverty. Since one of the housing program rules was that no man could be in the house, my grandfather moved out so that my grandmother would have a place to stay with their children. This caused problems between them and led them to divorce. My grandmother's concern was that since she was poor and dependent on social programs, that her children were headed in that same direction, and she tried to stop it. She said that she felt like as a result of the deal with the devil, her family had been infected with a poverty plague. There are several factors that cause a poverty plague. There isn't one main thing that causes it. It can basically be tracked down to what has infected the people who are in this poverty plague. Let's first look at the word disease, and let's break it down. It's actually two words, dis and ease, which means to not be at ease. There are four main types of diseases. 1. Infectious diseases. 2. Deficiency diseases. 3. Hereditary diseases. And 4. Physiological diseases. These four diseases in their proper meaning as it relates to non-medical issues best describe what is causing a poverty plague in some families and can lead to financial death. Now, let's look at all four of them individually. Infectious. The definition of infectious is likely to spread or influence others in a rapid manner. This is by far the most common diseases that causes and maintains a poverty plague. If someone of any influence within that community tells the uneducated people who may live there that it is better and safer for them to let the government provide them money and take a hand out instead of using it as a hand up, can spread through the community like a wildfire and destroy a lot of people's desire to seek a way out of poverty. Deficiency. Deficiency is defined as a lack of shortage. This disease is the most common disease that causes financial death because it can be confusing to figure out exactly what you may be lacking. Some people will lack education, and if they get that education, they can excel. Someone could have a really great education, but be lacking the experience. So it's not just one thing. Hereditary. Hereditary is defined as genetically transmitted or transmittable from parent to offspring. This is a disease that affects most people first because it's generally found in the home. Most children learn how to walk, talk, read, write, and a lot of other things from the time they are born until 8 years old. When you really think about it, that's a lot to learn in such a short period of time. During this time, children are heavily influenced by the people around them, such as their parents and siblings. Whatever the parents believe will influence what the child believes. If the parents believe that the child can be successful, then the child will most likely believe that they can be successful. And if they don't think that the child can be successful, then the child may grow up to believe that they can't be successful. If the parents are financially unstable and don't do anything to better their condition, then the child may believe that this is just the way that life is for them. The child may in turn pass these same good or bad things down to their children. Physiological. The definition of physiological is the normal function of a living thing. Most people want to be successful, and there are steps to becoming a success. And when someone is taking the right steps, there are those who want to interfere with those steps. And this can have a tremendously negative effect on the person striving for success. See, inherently, the person knows that despite whatever condition that they live in, that they must be educated or whatever vehicle that they plan to use to build their success. And when those steps are altered, it may greater their chances of failure. How do you become infected with these diseases? All of these diseases can be passed on either through direct or indirect contact. Direct contact occurs when the people who are closest to you are trying to pass these diseases on to you. So you have to be very careful who you have close to you, because they may be a carrier of one of the 4 diseases and pass it on to you and greater your chances for failure. An indirect contact can affect you in so many ways that it's impossible to name them all. However, the most common: social media, music, film, and news. Someone can use social media to project the negative views, and you see and hear it. And the next thing that you know, you've been affected with one of the diseases. So, you have to be very careful of what you read, watch, and listen to, because that indirect contact will lower your chances of success. So the questions become: how do you know that you have been affected? What are the symptoms? It's really quite simple. Are you pursuing your own success? If you are pursuing your own success, then there is a good chance that you have not been affected by any of the 4 diseases. It doesn't mean that they can't harm you, but you have made up your mind to deal with it and move on. If you are not pursuing your own success for whatever reason you can possibly think of, then you are infected by one of the 4 diseases. If you have been infected by any of the 4 diseases listed, you will know by first looking at the people who are closest to you. Are they positive or negative? Are they helpful or unhelpful? Now, look at yourself and be honest. Are you anything like them? Are you positive or negative? If you find that you are infected, there is a way to treat the disease and build up your immune system so that you are protected in case you are ever around those diseases again. The key to treating the disease is by attaining self-mastery. If you have won the battle for your mind, then nothing negative can live there very long. My grandmother said that as she now faced her imminent death, that she had figured out how to avoid making the deal with the devil, and she wanted us to be smarter than she had been. She said that the deal that she made was actually with herself. She said that in the beginning that she only needed the benefits to get through a rough time, and she swore that she would not continue with the benefits once they had gotten to their feet. At some point, she said that they began to depend on the benefits, and it just became easier to continue with them when they started having more children. It became easier to live without my grandfather in the house, despite the kids missing him. They had become dependent on those same benefits for the rest of her life and was never able to move away from it. At the same time, it put the entire family into a poverty cycle. This cycle could be broken with self-discipline. Number 1, create a purpose. A purpose is defined as the reason for which something is done or created, or for which something exists. Do you know what your purpose is? And do you have a purpose for your children? It will be very difficult to be successful if you don't know why you want to be successful. Do you want to be successful to get out of poverty? Do you want to be successful so that you are never in poverty? Do you want to become successful to buy nice things? What is your purpose? Number 2, find role models. Role models can be very helpful in attaining self-discipline, so be very careful who you choose as a role model. Don't choose a role model simply because they are rich or wealthy. It is advisable to choose a role model who has similar values that you have, and more importantly, a role model who has done what you are trying to do. Number 3, make the visions into tangible, thinkable ideas. Most people who desire to be successful can see themselves achieving their goals. And honestly, most people will achieve their goals if that vision is clear and definite. Number 4, control the emotions. This may be one of the most important things that you can do to attain self-discipline because our emotions can get the best of us. When I say control the emotions, I don't mean that you should be emotionless because that is not natural. What I mean is to control how you respond to certain things that may get said or done to distract you or make you give up. Expect that not everyone will believe in your vision, and instead of allowing that to make you lash out in anger or create fear, use it as fuel to understand why someone thinks that you will not be successful. What you will generally find is that the people who don't believe in your vision are not qualified to tell you that it can't become a reality because they have never done it themselves. Only people who have done what you are attempting to do are qualified to make any comments, and even then, you need to proceed with caution with them. Number 5, action plan. Make goals. Most people achieve their goals, but the problem is getting people to set their goals. You must set goals in order to stay on track. When you set your goals, then sit down and physically write down your action plan, and as I refer to them, your next step. Number 6, acquire knowledge, skills, and tools to execute. If you recall earlier that I said that one of the diseases is deficiency, in order to avoid this disease altogether, you will need to acquire knowledge, skills, and tools to execute your plan and reach your goals. You may need to get more education, surround yourself with qualified people, or learn how to operate a particular machine. Whatever it may be, you will have to do it in order to not have a deficiency disease. Number 7, persistence. Staying through the process. This is by far the most difficult thing for most people who desire to be successful. It's so easy to stick with something that's already working and making money, but it's so difficult to stick with something that's not making money yet. There is a process for success and wealth because both are built over time. Sometimes when we share our vision with people, they automatically think that it's supposed to happen immediately. And when it doesn't, the disease starts. And if you are infected by it, you will quit working towards your goal. You will need to stick with the action plan. Sometimes you do have to tweak parts of the plan as new information becomes available, but you will still need to go forward. Don't let someone talk you out of fulfilling your goals just because they've been infected. And now they want to infect you because they don't believe in your vision. You must stay persistent if you are to reach your goals. If you can master self-discipline, you will be successful at whatever you do. It may not be easy at first, but you can do it. Don't make a deal with the devil to live in poverty when you can live rich or wealthy. What you do today will affect your heirs tomorrow. Be the person who starts a cycle of affluence. Be the person who gets out of cycle of disparity. Always remember that the devil finds work. The one question that came to my mind as a child after hearing my grandmother's story was, who was the devil? Was it the biblical devil with a pitchfork, or was it something else? My grandmother came to the conclusion that the deal that they made was with themselves. In conditions of overpowering want and need, instinct overpowers intellect. Given their circumstances at the time, it seemed like the right deal to make, because there would be shelter, food, and money available as long as they stayed poor. The second that they were no longer poor and no longer qualified for the program, they would be left to fend for themselves, which I'm sure it frightened them since they had very little education. What I also learned from listening to my grandmother's story was that we all have a window of opportunity, but that window is slowly closing. And if we don't take advantage of the opportunities, they will be lost, and we may find ourselves in poverty and unable to escape the clutches of poverty. Remember that when a window of opportunity opens for you, it opens for everyone attached to you. By taking advantage of this window, you can not only become a success, but the people who are attached to you will become a success too. This is how wealth building begins. This is the first step. Do not be confused by short-term gains, because that is a deal that is being offered by your undisciplined mind. A disciplined mind recognizes that wealth and success is built over time. There is no deal for the disciplined. There is only the open window of opportunity that he or she must take advantage of daily.